I want to start by playing what has to be my favorite clip of the week, even though it's an old one. This is, I talk about the elites, and I talk about the elites being in this cloud of unknowing about the fact that they're buffoons. Here is a lady. Her name is, she was at a meeting called the Great Narrative meeting, okay? And the Great Narrative is in Davos, the World Economic Forum. And she's an Oxford economics professor, and it's almost unbelievable. She came on and was talking about how to make the narrative so that I'll use their words. They can guide the creation of a more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable vision of our collective future. In other words, how to talk us into doing what they want us to do. And this Oxford economics professor had this to say.
At Davos a few years ago, the Edelman survey showed us that the good news is the elite across the world trust each other more and more. So we can come together and design and do beautiful things together. The bad news is that in every single country they were polling, the majority of people trusted that elite less. So we can lead, but if people aren't following, we're not going to get to where we want to go.
We can lead, but people nobody's following us. Why is it? It's weird. We trust each other. We trust each other so we can do beautiful things. But those crazy people, they don't trust us, so they're not following us where we want them to go. It's an amazing, amazing lack of insights. And one of the themes of the Truth and Beauty is learning to collaborate with creation. This is something we do as individuals. The world consists neither of immutable, unchangeable facts that are out there, nor does it only consist of your feelings within. It's a mysterious kind of collaboration between our minds and our feelings and the world as it is. The most obvious example of this is when you fall in love with someone. You fall in love with someone, that person seems beautiful and perfect, and that can be a valid experience, like with my wife, who actually is beautiful and perfect. But it can also be a delusion, like my wife loving me, which just causes her all kinds of problems. When you're deluded in the way you experience the world, there are consequences for that delusion, right? You learn about your delusion through the consequences. If the people you love are ruining your lives, or if you build a machine that you think is going to take you to Mars and it ends up just falling down into a pit, you learn to do things differently. And the whole difference between a joyful, and I would say a godly life, and a miserable life is reacting to consequences with honesty and integrity and adjusting your side of the collaboration with reality. You say, I made a mistake. The person I fell in love with is not a good person. This machine is never going to go to Mars. It's just a sled. It's not going anywhere. Or in a more difficult situation, a more difficult example, you say, I got divorced and when my children were little, or I had an abortion, and now I realize that was the wrong thing to do. I did an immoral thing, and I have to accept that I did something wrong, rather than doubling down on that immorality and pretending it was the right thing so that you shout your abortion, or you become increasingly committed to the evil thing that you did. What is it that keeps people from accepting consequences and learning from them? We all know people who do this, right? We all know people who say, no, I know that drinking is ruining my life, but I can't stop drinking, so give me another solution. There is no other solution. You got to lay off the booze, right? What stops them from doing that? And this is, I think, what people mean by the sin of pride, why people say the sin of pride is such a terrible sin and such a problem. And a lot of people think pride is being puffed up. It's like saying, I'm great, I'm a terrific person, or like that Monty Python song, I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay. That's just a symptom of pride. That's the result of pride. What pride really is the inability to process shame. You can't admit you're wrong because your fragile, delusive sense of yourself as a good person won't survive, and you'll have to accept that you're a sinful creature, you're a broken creature. You can't accept that your actions have bad consequences or that they're immoral. You can't stand the shame of having done something wrong, and you can't stand the shame of someone else having been right. This happened to a lot of never-Trumpers. Have you noticed, there are a lot of never-Trumpers who just went insane, and now every word out of their mouth is absurd. Their opinions are people who are highly intelligent saying absurd things. It's because they can't accept it. Well, maybe they made a mistake. Maybe they should have voted for Trump. Maybe Trump had all kinds of flaws. Maybe he was a flawed human being. Maybe they didn't like him, but maybe it was better to have Trump appointing people to the Supreme Court than it would have been having Hillary Clinton appoint three justices of the Supreme Court. Pride keeps us from acknowledging the consequences of our mistakes. It keeps us. We keep saying we double down on the insanity of what we're doing. And I personally believe that this is a reaction to original sin, the fact that we know we're not what we're supposed to be. We know we're broken inside, and we're desperate to think that we have virtue. We're desperate to think that we are a good person, and we can't even accept God's forgiveness because that would mean we're not independent. We're dependent on God. And we can't even do that because that would be a kind of shame. It would be the shame of needing somebody. And we can't process that shame. If you can't process shame, you're forced to keep going down the wrong road even as you ruin your life. Right-wingers and left-wingers do this equally. The only difference is that socialism and collectivism never work. Capitalism and freedom can work when they're connected to moral/religious values. So right-wingers have a narrow chance of getting things right. We have a small chance that we might get things right. And through a genuine godsend of a conservative coalition of Reagan and Pope John Paul II and Maggie Thatcher, we destroyed the Soviet Union. We destroyed the Soviet Union. For the last 30 years, we've been living without consequences. We haven't had to deal with anything except for some savage tribes in the Middle East. We've dealt with a couple of medieval terrorists, but we really haven't had to deal with the kind of genuine global pressure that we got from the Soviet Union because of that moment. That means that the left took over all of our telecommunications, all of our communications territory, all of our culture, basically. And now the public at large is suddenly having this not so great awakening where we realize, oh, we forgot leftism, collectivism don't work, right? I mean, the economy had a good quarter because we're coming back from having shut down the economy completely, but people are suffering still because of inflation. We have high crime in our major cities. We have Russia and China and Iran colluding in what they call the resistance. They actually call it this. It's an effort to destroy the American-led world order. So the world order won't be led by a free nation anymore. It'll be led by these corrupt and autocratic leaders. We have bigots in ascendancy. Joe Biden saying that the Justice Breyer has announced his retirement from the Supreme Court at the end of this session. And Joe Biden says, oh, I'm going to appoint a black lady. And you think, well, why? That's racist. That's sexist. That actually is the thing that you've accused everybody else of. But we're not going to, so now we have racists and sexists at the very highest level of our government, where before that would have been unacceptable. And people are suddenly starting to wake up. And you see this, even the left, and the media, which is the same thing, they can't hide it anymore. Here, you will see Margaret Brennan did one of those Zoom, what do they call them, focus groups. And she asked people, how they like what's going on, right? Here's the clip.
During the course of the pandemic, we've been listening to Americans through Zoom to get their thoughts on COVID, the economy, and how the government is handling it all. On Friday, we checked back in with 6 of them. Who feels like we are in a better place now than we were a year ago? Show of hands. No one believes we're in a better spot now.
Well, that's not quite true. Somebody believes we're in a better spot now, or somebody at least is telling us that we're in a better spot now. Here he is.
As a result of the progress we made, record economic growth, record job growth, faster economic recovery than any other nation on earth, we are better positioned globally than we have been in a long, long time.
I love it. I love it. So that's what I'm talking about, the sin of pride. The left, which means all our institutions, Academy, Hollywood, news media corporations, in their pride, their inability to process shame, they're just going to double down on insanity. They're going to keep doing what they've been doing, no matter how badly it goes. And if you don't agree with them, if you don't think things are getting better, that's your fault. The elites all love each other. They all trust each other. Everything is great. If only, how come when they look behind them, when they lead and they look behind them, no one is there? What they do is they basically tell you the consequences aren't there. The numbers on the GDP are great. Why aren't you happy? Just because you can't afford to fill up your car. What's wrong with you? It's your fault. As somebody said, Paul Begala said, the Democrats aren't suffering from bad leadership. They're suffering from bad followers. It's your fault in the consequences. Abortion wouldn't be bad if you just stopped feeling guilty about it. People wouldn't kill police officers if they didn't have guns, right? It has nothing to do with us basically condemning all police officers and calling for defunding the police and calling them racist. That's not why they're shooting police in Houston and New York. Two young men who were police officers ambushed and killed in New York City. 3, I think, were shot in Houston. I think, God willing, they're still alive. Black communities wouldn't have so much crime if we just stopped arresting people, right? The problem is not that the high crime, it's that we just keep arresting people. Blame the consequences rather than the actions. That is the effect of pride. As the country faces its not-so-great awakening, the left is just doubling down on insanity. If you enjoy this content, like and subscribe to the Andrew Klavan Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.